Assume the cow is a sphere.
This old joke, if not very funny, does illustrate how, at least metaphorically, physicists picture the world. The set of tools physicists have to describe nature is limited. Most of the modern theories you read about began life as simple models by physicists who didn't know how else to start to solve a problem. These simple little models are usually based on simpler little models, and so on, because the class of things that we do know how to solve exactly can be counted on the fingers of one, maybe two hands. For the most part, physicists follow the same guidelines that have helped keep Hollywood movie producers rich. If it works, exploit it. If it still works, copy it. I like the cow joke because it provides an allegory for thinking simply about the world, and it allows me to jump right into an idea that doesn't get written about too much, but that is essential for the everyday workings of science. Before doing anything else, abstract out all irrelevant details. There are two operatives here, abstract and irrelevant. Getting rid of irrelevant details is the first step in building any model of the world, and we do it subconsciously from the moment we are born. Doing it consciously is another matter. Overcoming the natural desire not to throw out unnecessary information is probably the hardest and most important part of learning physics. In addition, what may be irrelevant in a given situation is not universal, but depends in most cases on what interests you. This leads us to the second operative word, abstraction. Of all the abstract thinking required in physics, probably the most challenging lies in choosing how to approach a problem. The mere description of movement along a straight line, the first major development in modern physics, required enough abstraction that it largely eluded some pretty impressive intellects until Galileo.
Fear of Physics by Lawrence Krauss. Find this audiobook and many more at atheistaudiobooks.com. The facts you won't hear in church. You're listening to The Phil Ferguson Show on Secular Media Network.
This is Phil Ferguson with Polaris Financial Planning, the home of science-based investing. I see people owning really bad investments all of the time. Many advisors are paid a commission by a big company to sell you something you may not need. It's kind of like church. They create fear, then they tell you what you want to hear, and then they take your money. What you want is an advisor that is paid only by you. That is a fee-only fiduciary advisor. Remember, people work for who they are paid by. You can contact me, Phil, at PolarisFinancialPlanning.com, or listen to the cleverly titled The Phil Ferguson Show. Each show, we have an interesting investing skeptically topic and an interview with someone fighting to end religion. Polaris also gives 10% of gross revenue to support the growing secular movement. You're not just getting better investments, you're helping to change the world.
Only on Secular Media Network.
All right, everybody, welcome back. This is Phil Ferguson, and you are still listening to The Phil Ferguson Show. With me is Guy P. Harrison, and we've been talking about some of his books. And Guy, I was curious. I looked on your Wikipedia page, and it just struck me that it mentions your early life, that you read Chariots of the Gods.
Yeah, wow, Wikipedia, that's strange. How do people get this stuff? I think I must have mentioned that in an interview like years ago, and somebody picked that up. But yeah, actually, I didn't read the book. I saw a documentary about the book, a documentary based on the book. It was actually, I think it was released in movie theaters. It was like a film, Chariots of the Gods, Eric von Däniken. It was a big hit, like in the 70s. And I saw it somewhere along the line. I was probably 8 or 9 years old, 10 years old, and it blew me away. But for anyone who doesn't know, Chariots of the Gods is this claim that aliens visited us long ago, in prehistoric times and in ancient times, And they did things like build the pyramids because we
Right.
were too stupid to figure out how to build pyramids. And they, kick-started civilization. Some people take it very far, say that, they interbred with us and all this stuff. But anyway, I saw the documentary, and it blew me away as a little kid. I was like, wow, this is amazing. And I couldn't understand why this wasn't a bigger deal. Wait a minute, aliens have been here and, they helped shape human civilization. Why isn't this, why isn't everybody talking about this? Why isn't this in my, class at school? What's going on here? I freaked out about it. And luckily, I'm so grateful to PBS. A few weeks later, PBS, Nova, this great show Nova, was going, when I was a kid it was on, still going today. Great program, science program. They had an episode that addressed Chariots of the Gods, analyzed it, and just obliterated it, blew it away. They had real archaeologists on. They had, people explaining all these carvings and artwork and all these things. And I watched that and I went, well, wow, you don't say so. Wow, there's another side to this stuff. You can't trust everything you see on TV.
How old were you? How old were you when that happened?
Oh, I was like 10, 10 years old. And it was a real, I can't say, I don't want to, I know how hindsight biases and all, and I don't want to make this overly dramatic. It's not like I stood up and ripped my shirt open and, stabbed my hands up to the heavens and screamed, I am a skeptic forever. It wasn't that dramatic, but it really made an impact on me that the way Nova just dismantled something that I had recently been really, almost convinced that was absolutely true. And I think it taught me, in an early age, it taught me a very important lesson about skeptical thinking. Just because some guy comes on, TV, and he's wearing a tie and he has maybe a title, doctor, in front of his name, it doesn't mean that he's right about everything he says. It doesn't mean that he's not a total nut. You gotta watch out. And so, and it also, I think one thing that stood out to me, I think it was the Maya. They have some artwork that Eric von Daniken claims is a guy in a spaceship, with controls and all this stuff. And they had a Maya specialist on, an archaeologist, who explained what was really going on in that artwork. And it was not a spaceship, that was the least likely thing it would be. And I watched that, and it really just, it opened my eyes to the fact that, you need to just think twice about stuff,
That just means you're blind to the big Maya conspiracy.
Yeah. And I always had, I've just always been really curious too. I think that's a big thing. I think that leads to being a really good thinker. If you're just generally curious, that good childhood curiosity that almost everybody has, don't ever lose it. Keep exploring, keep looking under rocks when you walk through a forest, keep looking up at night, look at the stars. Don't ever lose that, keep being curious, because curiosity is it's looking for answers, and if you get to the point where you think, okay, I've graduated from high school, I've graduated from college, I've got all the answers, no need for that silly curiosity thing anymore, well, you are a moron, because you are letting go of the one thing that's going to help make you a more sensible, wise human being forever, for the rest of your life. Keep asking questions, keep doubting, keep wondering, keep imagining. When somebody comes to me with something weird and unusual, even if I love the idea, even if I want it to be true, maybe it's about aliens, possibly on some new exoplanet just discovered, a new civilization or something. If I hear about it, I get excited. I want it to be true so bad, but I'm curious I want to know the reality. I don't want to pretend to know something I don't know. I don't want to jump on something just because it feels good. I want to know what's real. So I am always curious. And for me, curiosity means staying on that path towards figuring things out, finding out what's around the corner.
Have you ever watched the show Stargate?
Yeah.
Well, I think Stargate goes off of this mythos that's been around the United States, at least for 50, 60 years, of these ancient aliens kind of thing. And, the aliens who are symbiotic creatures built the pyramids and their landing bases for their spaceships. And it's one of the things that one well-known talks is called Breaking the Cycle, How to Help Kids Out of Religion, because when you were 10 and about when I was 13, we were exposed to contradictory information and saying, well, how do I know? How do I decipher this? So all of my nieces and nephews, when they turned around 12 for their birthday, I bought them season 1 of Stargate just so they could get exposure to sci-fi. And maybe they watched it, maybe they didn't, but maybe they go, hey, this stuff's kind of cool. Who knows? It's something to help them think, but I always found that show fascinating.
Yeah. I remember the movie, too. The movie. Prometheus, one of the sequels to the whole Alien movies, the Ridley Scott movie Prometheus is about that as well. It's about aliens coming to Earth, seeding life on Earth, and that kind of thing. It's a very Graham Hancock sells books on this, millions of copies on this idea, and it's just a lot of it. A lot of it really bugs me because it's almost kind of racist in a way. People point to even Eric von Däniken is horrible about it in his book. He may have softened it over the years with his new editions, but I've seen the originals, and he talks of savages like these Africans, savages not nowhere near intelligent enough to have created these buildings and these monuments and the pyramids and stuff like that. So clearly they must have had help, and it's just it just feels really really bad. And the thing is, just so people know, the human brain, the modern human brain has been in existence for about 100,000 years. It really has. Anatomically, modern people have been on this planet for 100,000 years, long time. So, our ancestors, our distant ancestors, didn't have the benefit of accumulated knowledge, and they weren't able to write down information and pass it on to successive generations in the way we can. They couldn't keep standing on each other's shoulders generation after generation, but still they were smart. They were extremely intelligent primates. Very smart. That's what we are. We're intelligent primates. But they were capable of all sorts of things, In fact, I would put my money on you find me a prehistoric family 50,000 years ago. I'd bet on them in most situations of, survival, figuring things out, problem solving. Then you pluck some family today out of Manhattan, because, man, we rely on so much. We offload so many of our cognitive responsibilities on technology. And they, prehistoric people, man, they had to map out their environment mentally. They had to do so many things. They had to plan. They had to really use their brains. They had to be sharp. I remember Jared Diamond, famous scientist, did a lot of work in Papua New Guinea with people who live there, searching for birds and stuff like that. And he commented on how a typical person in Papua New Guinea living in some little village, and basically, the kind of life that you would think of as not prehistoric, but definitely far from, anything we know as in the modern world. But these people, he said, man, on average, far more intelligent, sharp, quicker mentally than the typical American. Because they're living in such a challenging environment. Right. They've got to use their brains so much. Well, so it really bugs me whenever people talk about prehistoric people being dim or incapable.
Yeah. Well, Carl Sagan kind of struck me, and I think it was Demon Haunted World, where he started talking about, or Candle in the Dark, where he talked about as our technology grows, we actually run the risk that the vast majority of people, and I think we might be getting on the edge of this in America already, they use the technology, but they don't understand it. They don't know how to fix it. We're there. They don't know how it works. I had a client that was talking to me, and she had a computer problem, and I was trying to help her a little bit over the phone, and I said, how is it you don't know some of these basic things about how to make your computer work? And this is going to sound terrible, but it's what she told me. She said, well, that's what I usually count on my boyfriend doing. And so she didn't know how to fix anything.
Yeah. Well, there's a great potential there for us. It's not necessarily bad that we don't know how our phones work, or our computers work, or stuff like that, because you could say, well, you know what, that's good. we don't have to spend a year learning how computers work, how phones work, all the electronics and all that time, that